SKYROK, your quantum solutions.
Hey everyone, welcome to Thought Stream on SKYCIETY, brought to you by SKYROK Galactic. Today, we have something really cool for you all, and that's the daughter of the Godfather of Conspiracies. That's right. She is the granddaughter to Bill Lear and the daughter to John Lear. She grew up in Las Vegas and right around all of those cool bases that we've all heard of, 51, S4. She knows what's going on. So we brought her in. She's going to discuss some topics that I know you're all wanting to know true answers about. What's going on in America? What's going on the moon? Are there extraterrestrials? Yes. Are there interdimensionals? Yes. Are they the same? There's a lot of different species out there. And she's been growing up in the thick of it, right down over in Las Vegas and other places, so she can tell us all what's it about. Ally, I want to thank you for being here. And let's get started first on your grandfather, who he was, Bill Lear.
Hi there, Ashley. Thank you for having me. He was a radio operator for the Navy in World War I. In 1922, he established Quincy Radio and Lear Radio. And then he developed the first working car radio in 1930. After that, he sold his company to Paul Galvin and it later became known as Motorola. He developed the first autopilot for the F-5, won the Collier Trophy in 1949. And then in 1963, the first Learjet took off. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning.
So he was the father of the infamous John Lear, who exposed 51 with Bob Lazar at the same time. Can you tell us more about how your father was connected with the jet engines and more? I know he was a pilot, but what agency was he a pilot for?
Well, he has the most FAA airman certificates of any other pilot in the world. He can fly pretty much anything. He did do some work with the CIA. He wasn't necessarily an agent. He was a pilot. So sometimes I would, call him. Where are you? Bogota. Where are you going? Miami. What are you flying? Flowers. Right. Okay. Sure. Sounds good, Dad. But yeah, he allowed that his family to grow up all over the world and learn a lot while doing it.
Oh boy, did he learn a lot. There were some interesting things that we got to see when you showed us all of his memories. And I got to read some, whoa. Oh, guys, listeners out there, the stuff that I was exposed to when I was able to read through what this man had stored up. It's easy to say I didn't sleep for like 3 weeks. Yeah. It was really cool
Interesting to say
stuff.
the least.
There were so many things that he blew the lid on. Back when he came out about this with Bob Lazar, a lot of people didn't even really know about the word alien or extraterrestrial, and they were very shocked, to say the least. What was it like growing up as a niece of Bob Lazar, basically? Bob Lazar being very much like your uncle and your dad's really close friend.
They were very good friends. It was interesting, but it wasn't really a big deal, to me, because Bob Lazar taught me how to roll stars, which is the first step in making fireworks in his garage. And that was just, a regular Sunday afternoon. We'd go and blow up stuff, or, just who knows? You never knew. One time, they'd always play tricks on each other, and my dad drove down to Los Alamos when Bob was working there and put a banana in his tailpipe. Well, he came over to our house when he got back to Vegas, and he dyed our pool yellow. So Mom wasn't having that. She went over and aimed her pistol at his Corvette and said, "You can mess with my man, don't mess with my house." So the next day, Bob was over acid washing the pool. Just little stuff like that that was really interesting, and I'd see stuff on TV about those two, and it just seemed old hat to me. Another quick story. A lady came to visit Dad with her son. I answered the door and walked them into his den. And it was really weird. All of a sudden, 10 minutes into them talking, the son looks at her and then looks at my dad and says, "My mother would like a glass of milk." And I went, "Wait, what?" So when they left, I asked Dad, I said, "That was really weird and just, it just didn't feel right." And he said, "Allie, she had her tubes tied and she was abducted. And then she had her son." So it was very interesting.
Wow. Wow. I read some incredible stories, some that really touched my heart with regards to the abductions that was in your father's materials. One in particularly was on a yellow sheet of paper with lines. And I remember this because it was a desperate plea from a father in the 80s and 90s. His son had been taken by certain agencies or powers that be. The last call that he had was that his son was really scared, actually, because he was being tested on by his genetics and his genetic material. And the father never talked to him again, didn't know where he was, couldn't find him, and he was asking John for his help. And that letter will always stick out to me because there are things happening, bloodlines, the genetics, it's really going on, and terrestrials and extraterrestrials are coming in and using people, human beings, for breeding projects and breeding programs. There's a lot of different reasons why. Some to enhance their own species, some because they just want to be scientists and test things out. And then at the same time, some of these are actually in the population right now, walking among us. KingZilla, do you want to weigh in on this and give us your take?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. First of all, thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you being here. And I just watched a video with your father being interviewed some years ago with George Knapp. And I remember watching that here in Las Vegas when that had aired. And there were quite a few things that your father said in that interview that really triggered me, because I've always had a belief that there's more to our existence than what we have been programmed to believe. And I believe that whistleblowers like your father and other people were pinnacle in helping a lot of people come to that truth and that realization. So what I'd like to ask you is, one of the things that your father said in that interview has, it stuck with me because Ashley sent me a link to revisit some things. And when I looked at that interview, there was one thing that really stood out, and that was your father spoke of the American government knowing of 5 to 10 existing different species that was visiting or having some type of contact with us on this planet. And the key thing he said, and I kept going over this before this morning, the key thing he said is that 90% of them mean humanity no goodwill. Now, for me, I've always believed that there's very few that's in our corner. I believe that the American government, because of their thirst for technology and pushing forward, have merged and done deals with the wrong ones. So I was wondering if you'd like to speak up on that, how you feel about that, or what you know about that, because I think that's very important. So, I mean, what is your take on that?
That was a long time ago. That was 1989. So if he said
Yes.
around 5 to 10 species, I can't even imagine how many they're communicating with these days. That would be just the tip of the iceberg. The fact that they exist is so just the tip of the iceberg. It goes way deeper than you could even imagine. But yes, I totally agree. And a lot of people say, oh, aliens are bad. Well, that's like saying, oh, okay, well, Americans are bad. You know, there may be a few good ones. There may be a few bad ones. We don't know. I don't know how to determine, you know, that. But they could have made deals with good ones, which is where I believe we get some of our technology. You know, the bad ones haven't so far, to me at least, showed themselves. But hope for the best, I guess. All we can do is, you know, live our life, as he said, with integrity, without envy, hate, or greed. Express our love to our family each and every day, and enjoy the 70 plus or minus years that we inhabit the human form, if we're lucky.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you that, you know, we have to live regardless of what is going on around us. I just had this conversation with Ashley earlier that no matter what, you have to live. You can't live in fear. Definitely these things are going on in the background, but the background is now coming into the forefront. But you still can't live in fear.
Very true. As scary as it is, like, for example, Dulcie, with those many levels of the alien levels, the human levels, the alien and human joint experiments like you're talking about absolutely exist. I have some more information on a man named the Crypto Hunter. So we'll have to get into that another time, but incredible stuff there at Dulcie. And I'm sure there's a good level, a bad level. I'm sure there's mixed. And it's a very fine line how the government is playing it. And it's the elitist government, not just our president. Our president has, what, top secret crypto, 17-ish clearance, which I hear, not for sure, but at least 30 levels above that.
What would you say? I mean, well, I haven't had a chance to read your book, so I am going to order it, so because I want to read it. What are some of the things in your book that you talk about pertaining to these different things?
Well, it's a compilation of my dad's Facebook post. He'd always wanted me to put it together, and finally we put it together, and his wonderful dry sense of humor, it's an incredible read. It talks about him calling out everybody and everything that he knows, everything he thinks he knows, and just a plethora of small stories. You can pick it up, you know, read 10 minutes, you can pick it up and read the whole thing. But it'd be a great gift, but it'll open your eyes in so many different ways. And I had way more questions once I got done putting it together, and I still read it over and over, and I still have more questions, and I wish he was here to answer them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, trust you me, that is on my thing to do. Is it available for our viewers to purchase on Amazon? What bookstores are it in? Maybe you could let us know.
It is on Amazon. I don't believe it's audio yet, but we are working on that.
Okay. Well, I will be purchasing that today, so I can't wait to read through it.
It's the John Lear Chronicles. It's called The Truth. Can You Handle It? A gal named Susan Morgan helped put it together.
Okay, awesome. I can't wait to get my hands on it, so I will be ordering that today.
That's great. I will provide the link below for our viewers so that they can go and check it out too. I definitely recommend that you read this book. I had a chance to read this, but I also had a chance to read a lot. Ruben introduced me to Ally, our special Ruben Hernandez with SKYROK Galactic and SKYCIETY. He introduced me to Ally, and boy, that was a training experience for what we've now moved into. So I've been exposed to a lot of information and technology, but when I got to answer and see your dad's work, that was just the beginning. And especially when we talk about the species and the governments. So I'd like to weigh in and say, I don't think it's necessarily the American government that has made the deals. There have been agents worldwide that are part of secret societies, secret control areas, secret groups, and they've inserted themselves in places like the American government, like governments all around the world. And now what's happened is there's a new guard. So we don't even have to worry about that anymore because the new guard have stepped in the place of those big names like Rockefeller and Rothschild who were making those deals. And now the new guard is in place and they work with the friendlies and the ones that can be trusted. And there was a lot that your father had shared about with regards to the various species, which you'll be able to find in that book that Ally has. He really touches base upon what was happening, what is happening, and going back and reading that, boy, it sure is just like prophecy, I tell you. Ally, can you tell us how you and Ruben Hernandez met? I know that his meeting with your father was very much inspirational to his work today. And ever since then, boy, he's been on SkyOps after SkyOps, operation after operation, and same with you. And now we've all come together with SKYCIETY to be those united white hats. And I really think that the audience would love to hear the story about how you and him met.
I met Ruben in Whistler, BC, on a snowboarding trip up there, kind of off the wall. And then when he came down and met Dad, we lost touch for a long time, but little did I know, him and Dad kept in touch and did a few interviews and actually talked a lot. And it was refreshing when we found each other again and I met you, and the whole new level. So whoever's controlling the strings up there, whether it be a human, whether it be a giant spider or a spirit, they're really lining everything up for what is to come.
So that meeting in Vegas that he came down to meet you and your father with, who was all there that day? Do you want to share a little bit about what went down at that meeting? Because I know there was some pretty cool monumental moments right there.
I don't remember exactly who was there at that meeting. I do remember my father handing him some documents, which are very important, as Ruben knows, and maybe he can share some of those sometime along this podcast. But the fact that they stayed in touch and really shared so much more than I had any idea is quite refreshing. And I'm very happy that he is back in my life and you are back in my life and that we're on this journey together.
We're thankful for you too, Ally. It's been so great knowing you and being a part of your life. I consider you a sister. Now, I've got another question. Maybe you can tell the audience, maybe you can't, but if you can, that would be cool. What is Project Looking Glass?
What I gather from Looking Glass is the monitoring, I guess, of humans on Earth. It goes incredibly deep down that rabbit hole, but they can pretty much see you through your television. For years and years and years, there used to be a marking on a California cable box that said that they could see you through that. So please cover your TV, you know. Didn't say to cover it, but a lot of people did. Not quite sure if that's still these days, but I would believe that to be so. If it occurred, it was, you know, in existence back then, it goes way deeper today. And especially with these phones, you know, they can watch you and listen and fly over and capture anything that they want if they needed it. If you look at another podcast on YouTube called Monkey Works, he uses Sky Glass, and that monitors all the air traffic around the world. And the things that I have learned from him saying, okay, well, this happens in the news. This is what's going on in the sky. Immediate, correlation to different things like the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline. You could completely see a P-8 fly over, refuel in the air so it didn't have to land, and clearly fly back to the U.S. So I believe that we had something to do with that. Not quite sure. But that's definitely an interesting one to figure out, the air traffic above. In Earth, anyways, until we can get beyond, or until they let us know, that they're already beyond.
What's going on the moon?
A lot more than we are told. I mean, why does it take so long to get there now? We were there before. What's the problem? They don't want us there.
Who's they?
Not sure. I don't believe that it's, there is a base there, I think. Haven't been there myself, but I don't think that it's a human base. It could be a humanoid. It could be, humans from one of the other planets in our solar system that are inhabited, which most of them are. But definitely higher consciousness, more advanced, intelligent beings.
That makes me think about one thing, you saying that it seems to be multiple points of entry into certain areas that we are denied, right? I think about Admiral Richard E. Byrd with Antarctica. There's a no enter zone for humanity there, basically being warned, hey, don't come back up here. We don't want your influence or your violent nature. It's not welcome here. That was established shortly after World War II had ended. So it just seems like there's always this thing that you hear, well, you're not welcome here. Don't come back here or whatever. So that's interesting. You mentioned that pertaining to the moon as well.
Yeah, a question to ask a lot of people, which, most of them I tell them to catch up a little bit before I can conversate. But if you think about it, was our moon naturally there, or could it have been towed into place?
Yeah, that's something I've read about in many different books, that it's not a natural satellite going around the Earth. So yeah, I've read much literature talking about that and aiming at that as being such.
A good book, Norm Berggren, The Ring Makers of Saturn, is definitely one to check out. One of my dad's favorites, but that'll open your eyes even more.
Okay. Definitely stuff to look forward to as far as reading, especially to our viewers. You're giving a lot of good gems for them research-wise. That's great.
And I hope they take the time, don't just listen to me. Do your own research, gather your own ideas, and enjoy this journey.
Our journey it is. It's, your living existence, you never stop learning. If, you refuse to take in new knowledge or to, go beyond what you feel is real now, you're really downgrading, in my opinion, your human existence. So, it's like anything, you never stop learning. So yeah, definitely there's so much we don't know and so much to learn.
Next question. Tell us about the reptilians.
The reptilians are, I believe, among us. I don't want to dive too deep into that because of my knowledge level isn't quite there. I'm more interested in the mind modification, the brainwashing, the moon. So
MK Ultra
definitely existed, of course. so many of those programs do, and so many sleepers still around, and you never know what the keyword is gonna be, or what the main goal is gonna be.
Elaborate
Very
on that.
interesting. It's just very interesting to look into the brainwashing of the general public, the human form. I mean, it's the media. This kind of dumbs everybody down to keep paying attention to everybody here on Earth and don't look up. You know, don't realize that we're such a speck. We're just an ant. You know, look up. There's so much more. Can't everybody just get along?
Allie, what has your
Yeah.
dad shared with you with regards to some secret tradings or anything else about technology and the sharing of technology between extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, and the humans?
It's happening 24/7. It wasn't one time, you know, it wasn't two times. It's constant. We are working with them. They're working with us. Kind of hard to deny that part.
One thing your father mentioned was basically kind of a warning in some ways. He said, if you see a ship, don't hang out to figure out if it's good or bad, right? And I think that he was sharing with people before it came to light about the soldiers who have lost their lives to interacting with these things. Sometimes it's from brain damage, sometimes it's from war. I know there's things happening right now down in Antarctica because I've worked with special forces and heard their stories. But wow, he really lets you know in those books how to handle and prepare for what's to come and what is here. We lost 100 soldiers. There are lawsuits right now in America where families have sued the government because their children were killed during their service in the Army, the Navy, this, that, and the other, with regards to interactions with these UFOs and these extraterrestrials. Do you care to weigh in on that?
There's actually a story in the book that goes into a lot of detail. I'll leave it to that to explain it, but there's also a letter that I ran across from the Office of the Air Force, and how it got to my father, I'm not quite sure, but it was about Russian scientist that was hired by us to specifically talk about, you know, these in the disinformation form. So I'll get you a copy of that. That's a good one.
Oh, I look forward to it. KingZilla, what do you think about that?
When it comes to like you mentioning the thing that happened with the soldiers and you know, her father, you know, talking about if you see these things, you know, it's best to go in the opposite direction because you don't know what side they're on or how they're operating. I would have to agree with her father definitely on that. And, you know, something that of that magnitude, you see it. I mean, yeah, don't be in fear, but on the same token, curiosity killed the cat. So at this point, yeah, I would go into the opposite direction. And as far as our soldiers are concerned, I've read more than enough cases on these dumps, these deep underground military bases where, you know, soldiers have went down and actually got into war situations with these things down there, and it didn't end up good in a lot of ways. As a matter of fact, I'd like to ask you about one particular case of a guy that has clearance that he's been able to go into a lot of dumps, deep underground military bases all over. And he spoke of one particular time when he went down into a base. I thought this was a very interesting story. Actually, it made the hairs on my arm raise up when I got to a certain part of it, right? And he had to sign on a piece of paper that when he went down there, he would not mention the name Jesus in any kind of way. Don't say that when you go down there, right? Don't use that name, that word. So when he goes down there, he says that he meets up with these beings 9 to 12 feet tall, and they claim to be Nephilim. And in the conversation, working with military down there, they said to this particular guy that they are preparing for an intergalactic war with God, and that they believe that they are going to win. And I was like, wow, that was the only thing I've read where it spooked me, right? It made the hairs on my arm raise a little bit, because here was something referring to something biblical and spiritual, right? But these beings are telling this guy, we are preparing for an intergalactic war with God. They believe they're going to win. So I thought that was really interesting. That was one of the number one stories I always go back to about something that took place in these deep underground military bases. I don't know how true that is, but I just thought it just resonated with me for some reason.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So again, going back to what your father said and everything, I think he's accurate on that. Go in the opposite direction.
Well, just from my past, growing up, as much as I want to put my thumb out and hitchhike a ride off of this dirt ball, I would probably run. But I want to learn more and as much as I possibly can while I'm here. But yeah, he told me that most of them don't mean us well. There might be a few that are are good ones. Same with, any population. There's good ones, there's bad ones, but it's not worth the risk. So definitely run. But take pictures if you can.
Well, when I read a lot of these reports of what they do to human beings, impregnating them against their will, taking someone out of their home against their will, it feels like a really demonic experience. It's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just don't think that that's cool to do that to someone against their will. Now, if you're willing to say, hey, beam me up and do whatever you want to me, well, that's a different thing. But when you wake up in the middle of the night and your ceiling is open and there's these things by your bed, you can't move, you're trying to scream, you can't scream, and all of a sudden this weird stuff is being done to you, well, that's not cool.
Right. I believe we are an experiment of the soul. What does every one person have? That. When you get on an airplane, they say 172 souls aboard, 132 souls aboard. That's how we're counted. So we must be an experiment of the soul. My father thought the same. He thought a lot of crazy stuff, and I believe him on most of those aspects. And we're finding out now more and more things come true every day that he said. So I'm excited for you to hear the book, to read the book, and let's maybe get together afterwards, discuss some of those stories.
Yeah, I'm definitely down for that. So trust me, I will be getting in touch with Ashley saying, man, we got to talk to her again.
Definitely. We'd like to let our viewers know we have a lot of cool things that will be coming out right now. We've also got some sneak peeks into some video that's never been before seen, and that will be released. We've got her book. We have the next time she'll come on. There's questions I'm sure many of you have. Go ahead and send us an email, a comment, a message. You can DM us, Instagram, Facebook, email on our website, SKYCIETY.space. What do you want to ask Ally? Do you have questions? How do you feel about this? We'd love to hear from you. Let us know. We thank you so much for your time, and we know it's very valuable, the most valuable resource that you have, and you chose to spend it here with us. Blessings.
See, I can teach you how to walk untouchable. I can teach you how to talk in scripture all alone. I can teach you what it means to live eternally. Only if you let me.